think the reason Gen 3 was not as favored was mainly because the generation's unserious portrayals of gender and sexuality in the final season. It's jarring because of all the shows on television at the time. Skins seems like the most obvious one to get this right, especially with how they handled Maxie, Naomi, and Emily. We have Nick Van and Minnie McGuinness as our King Jock and Queen Bee. They are both the traditional ideals of their respective genders, but they don't belong together at all, and neither is having any fun. They both struggle under the weight of keeping up with these traditional gender ideals, where Minnie alters herself and suffers in so many ways to keep her appearance perfect, while Nick does the same, hating the pressures that come with being the best. Looking at their parents, it becomes extremely obvious as Nick is raised by a single father who was selling the manosphere bullshit before it was popular.
Mr. Blood, when I first agreed to send Nick here, despite offers from several other and frankly better alternatives, you promised certain privileges. Now, of course, some of those offers are still on the table.
I see. And what of Mrs. Levan? Is she as committed to this new direction?
Mrs. Levan isn't committed to anything. Her family in particular is what you know.
And Minnie is raised by her single mother.
Didn't keep you up last night, did I? That guy turned out to be a right door. Couldn't get enough of it. Remember, men only want one thing, and once they've got it, they disappear into thin air.
Clearly, both of these characters are being negatively influenced by their parents and are suffering as they are forced to live as this gender ideal that their parents could never attain for themselves. So when Franky comes in, everyone is floored, watching as this girl comes in and is an individual. She looks feminine, but she dresses masculine, and her name is Franky, so everyone there feels like they're looking at an alien when they see her. That's how rare androgynous gender expression was in a mainstream way, even for teens in 2011.
Has the circus come to town or what?
I felt like I've been given this wonderful gift to tell a story that I think a lot of people needed to hear. A, to kind of normalize those things for people that weren't directly experiencing it, and B, to just give some representation to young people who are questioning their sexuality, who are questioning their gender identity, and to just make that kind of a conversation that we could have like on a popular kind of mainstream channel.
If you didn't adhere to traditional gender expressions, you were outcasted right away.
What? Oh my god, what the hell are those? Earth to oddness, what are you staring at? See you on the field, stud.
Franky is clearly the subversive character, and they even give her a subversive home life with a mother who gave her away for adoption, and she ends up being adopted by a gay couple who met in the military. As a subversive character, Franky begins to get the chance to be herself amongst people who would understand due to her own dad's subversive situation, especially in 2011 when gay marriage wasn't technically legal in the UK, only civil partnership, which were newly introduced in 2004. While watching the 5th season of Skins, you start to see that Franky is a catalyst of sorts due to her ambiguous gender.
I do think you were one of the first people to actually have a line in a show which said, I don't like either sex, I like people.
Yeah.
And that you were being asked a direct question. Your character was being asked, are you a lesbian or are you straight? And the response wasn't, I like boys and girls. It was, I like people. That's something I'm not sure had been said on television before.
I mean, like, do you like boys or... Because no one cares. Fuck, I could tell you some stories about Minnie that'd surprise you.
Franky is Viola, the girl dressed as a boy who can't get what she wants. Whatever that is.
You haven't really told us whether you're a, or a...
A what or a what?
A lesbian.
Liv, that's so... No, it's okay. I don't mind. And the answer is no, I'm not anything.
So you're bisexual?
No, I'm
into people.
At first, they positioned as Minnie and Nick hate Franky, but this later changed when they both end up becoming extremely close with her in the 6th season. Minnie and Franky were high-key being set up to be love interest, and then the storyline was just dropped. It was weird because if you watch the actress talk about their characters, they clearly have a lot of chemistry, but nope.
Frenemies?
Yeah, they're
not just enemies. But
yeah.
with
Well, where you kind of pretend you're friends, but actually, you know.
I think they both make an effort to please each other and then realise it's not going to work until they actually get to know each other. And I think that's kind of what's similar about them, is that they both put on a front and neither of them really want to let anyone in.
What are you two like in real life? You're quite good friends.
About that.
Yeah.
No, I probably have to tell the truth now. I think I found the girl I want to be with. The one. I think we found each other finally. No, we're very good friends.
This is a special moment.
It is, yeah. I'm glad you're catching this on camera.
They just become oddly close friends, while 6th season Franky is being fought over by brothers Nick and Maddie Levan. Maddie and Nick are complete opposites, with Maddie being more emotionally mature in a way that is seen as traditionally feminine, and which adds to the clash between him and his domineering father. Maddie and Franky make more sense in the 5th season because they are both outcasts and can connect through that, as their juxtaposing gender dynamics mesh well, with the more traditionally masculine traits of Franky pairing with the more traditionally feminine ones of Maddie. They match each other's freak. I think Nick falls for Franky for the same reason Minnie does, in that they see her unapologetically being everything that they thought they weren't allowed to be. However, with Skins already featuring a lesbian couple from the last generation with Naomi and Emily, I have a feeling this held them back from exploring Minnie and Franky romantically.
Well, yes and no. I think everyone likes a bit of, girl-on-girl sexual tension. God knows I do. I think it makes sense because there's obviously there's tension there, and I think girls go through massive phases like that because it's kind of searching for yourself within someone else and searching is it attraction, is it sexual attraction, is it more of a kind of admiration?
So now we move on to my next question. What the fuck happened to Franky, and how did she end up going from Maddie to Nick?
I was not certain if I was coming back for season 6 when we finished shooting season 5, and when the series came out and I saw the responses, and I had a lot of responses from people who were going through something similar, saying that it really meant a lot to them to see that on TV.
100%.
That was the thing that made me think, what, this is actually bigger than me, and it would be so awful if that was not part of the next season. And then we were due to fly to Morocco to shoot episode 1, and we were getting the scripts in for that, and they suddenly had introduced this character, what's his name? Luke. Oh, I nearly forgot. So that was a whole thing for me as well, kind of going, oh, okay, there's this storyline that I hadn't expected.
Yep.
And then they hit me with the and by the way, you've been dating Matty between season 1 and season 2. And I was like, okay, that's a lot to get my head around as well. And I remember
that was literally, sorry to interrupt you, but that was just given to you, that information. It wasn't discussed in a kind of...
I knew that there would be a new character that I would have a relationship with.
Right.
And originally he was supposed to be a football hooligan. And I believe it's either in episode 5 or 6 that Franky starts a relationship with Nick. And I remember saying to Brian, I was like, how many people am I going to have relationships with this series? Because I've kind of gone from being the girl that had probably never been kissed in the first season, and who couldn't, she couldn't get in a swimming pool without a t-shirt on, to, suddenly I'm sleeping with almost every character in the show, and I'm behaving in a way that seems really cruel and out of character. And I understand that she's grieving, and I understand that she feels guilty and she blames herself, and you know that there's all this stuff going on, and obviously that can really change a person. And I said, but I said, I'm sorry, but I kind of feel like a bit of a whore.
Why are you even talking to me anyway? Today, please?
Yeah. Why am I? I think I love you, dick.
In the 5th season, these two people who don't even look like they belong in the same universe as one another, but now this is Franky and she's not into Maddie anymore, but Nick, like, Minnie's right there. The chemistry's right there, but Nick?
So many people are saying that they shipped Franky and Minnie. I think I know what that means, but I'm not quite sure enough.
It was another one of those things where we didn't really know what was going on when we were shooting it. It felt like every few days we were told, like, oh, you two are going to get together in the end. And then it was, no, you're not going to get together. And then, oh, but you are going to get together. Oh, well, you're going to get together, but then you're going to, like, break up. And so we never really knew what it was that we were playing. And I think that's kind of why it ended up being something that, like, just walked the line of being almost a kind of romantic relationship, but not quite. Given that they had taken so much away from Franky, it would have been nice to have seen that relationship come to fruition. I think it would have brought us back to who she was when we first met her a little bit. It would have given a conclusion to the kind of sexuality struggle that she was having initially, and also the sexuality struggle that was hinted at with Minnie's character in season 1 as well. So it would have been nice to see a conclusion to that. Sorry to say it, but I think maybe the reason they didn't do it is because they knew how much people wanted it. And I think they kind of wanted to subvert people's expectation. I think if nothing else, it would have been nice to just see Franky happy at the end and in a good place. And I think actually a healthy relationship with Minnie could have done that for her. I think like you say, there's a value in the relationship that they had anyway, because that is a relationship that I think a lot of young women can relate to. I certainly had friends with that sort of
level of intimacy.
Intimacy that bordered almost on a romantic relationship, but was never that.
The gender expression of 5th season Franky was more masculine, whereas in season 6 she was entirely feminine. Here we had a totally unique and much needed character that treaded even further outside the binaries of boy and girl. The closest representation of a teenage non-binary main character at the time. Yes, kids go through phases, but Franky's gender was right on time, and she represented a group of teenagers living outside of the gender norms that hadn't had their stories told.
Oh my gosh, you've never worn makeup before, have you?
No.
Well, what about with your girls in Oxford?
I didn't have none.
No friends?
No, I had a mate, a best mate, Dean, but he went young offenders.
That's so fucking cool.
I won't bite.
Look, it's just a try, okay? Some eyeshadow won't hurt.
Look like a fucking twat.
What, like me, you mean?
No, it's just...
You look like a punky butterfly. So it's sorted then.
What is?
What you're wearing to my party. Butterfly. Oh, minus the wife beater and, shorts. Naturally.
But instead, this increasingly progressive teenage show snatched that away and said, hey, this needs more patriarchy.
We had costume fittings, and we all had to do basically like a bikini parade for Brian, who had come back at this point, because we were all going to be in like swimwear for the whole first episode pretty much, and you know, they needed to okay what we were going to be wearing, and they had picked for me one of those like striped, almost like Victorian, like a sort of play suit, swimsuit with like shorts and sleeves.
I know the one.
Yeah, which I thought was absolutely, you know, in line with Franky's aesthetic up to that point. And I remember coming out and, you know, standing there in front of Brian and costume team, and he looked at me, and here I go, never working with Brian Elsley again. I doubt he'd want to see me after I say this. But he looked at me and he said, "I'm bored, make it sexy." And like that, my character just changed. And suddenly I was presented with scripts where I didn't recognise the character that I was playing anymore.
I liked it better when she might or might not have been lesbian.
So Franky started to still harness a more masculine gender expression, but she presented more feminine. It sort of feels similar to Sketch's character, who we initially saw as more masculine presenting, but then switched and became more feminine to attract a different boy instead. Now seeing Franky, they made the most significant thing about her character insignificant, and now she was just like the other girls. Going back across the two generations, we had never seen a character change this much from their initial portrayal. Even Tony, who got hit by a bus, had more consistency than this. Also, in each generation, we can see this very gendered pattern of heterosexual love triangles, whether it's Tony, Sid, and Michelle, or Cook, Effie, and Freddie. Again, despite Franky and Minnie becoming a couple, making more sense, they decided to repeat this trope, shifting Franky's gender nonconformity into a more traditionally acceptable state so she's allowed to inhabit the role to make this love triangle work. I mean, they already did one in the prior season, a love triangle between Maddie and Minnie and Franky, and then having Liv also be mad because she liked Maddie. That made sense. It made all sense. This doesn't make sense. Imagine if Franky was still dressed like her season 5 self. Would she still be desired in this way? Would Nick, a traditionally masculine boy, be subtly in love with her, or are his feelings based on her new traditionally feminine looks? Besides Franky, even a character like Nick became watered down once he defied his gender stereotype in season 5 and went against his father and defended his untraditional brother, which was honestly amazing to see. However, in the 6th season, despite his character becoming more empathetic and embracing more traditionally feminine characteristics, instead of exploring the side of Nick and addressing his need for a more feminine connection by discussing his missing mother, they stuck him back in this love triangle dynamic with his brother once again, just replacing Liv with Franky. There were too many love triangles in the 3rd generation.
Don't walk away from me, Franky. Don't you dare fucking walk away from me! From me!
And why does everyone want fucking Franky? It's almost as if they had Franky's character take Liv's role as the sexualized alternative girl who was Minnie's best friend.
You know, it's not my fault you're jealous, because Matty and Nick chose me.
In one way, this served Liv's character as she became less sexualized, and we were able to learn more about her character outside of her relationships with Maddie and Nick, while also seeing how she handles grief and growing apart from her friend. This is all done without changing Liv's gender expression, whether good or bad, but emphasizing her femininity through her emotionality as she is grieving or taking care of her younger sister when her mother and older sister are absent, while also showing more traditionally masculine characteristics like overindulging in alcohol and drugs. Actually, in season 6, Liv isn't as sexualized once Grace dies, and even as she tries to hook up with new boy Alex, he turns her down because he's gay. Moving on to Alex, he's very much reminiscent of Maxie in the way that his sexuality isn't the focus. Unlike Maxie, Alex is even more cisgender, and we don't see a gay male romance narrative at any point for him. While his sexuality is present, it's based on him having random hookups, which play into the more traditionally masculine side of his character, while also using his caretaking of his grandmother to present his more traditionally feminine side. However, this leaves another missed opportunity for a gay romance narrative that is focused on male couples. It also feels as if a lesbian romance narrative is easier for the writers to produce with Emily and Naomi, similar to how many heterosexual men are more comfortable with gay women because they are sexualized to them, but are uncomfortable with gay men. Even though we have Alex in the 6th season, there are still countless gay jokes and homophobic remarks throughout the show.
You don't get
to say her name, gay boy.
Fag? Fag hag? Still in that mood then?
We're gonna go Thekla tonight, if you fancy it.
Why? Is it ass radio night or something?
You know homophobia is not your forte. I can tell your heart's not really in it.
Well, enjoy your bum party, bum boy.
I think with Grace's death, all the characters were more vulnerable, especially Rich, whose gender expression shifted largely between seasons once he and Grace decided to get married, and he realized he didn't need his long hair to make him feel more tough. So for season 6, we not only received a more earnest Rich through his grieving, but one that is less afraid to take off the uniform of the metal scene because he knows he can actually be loved without it. We also see his relationship with his best friend Aloe grow stronger and the way they support one another in a very intimate manner once Grace dies. I really appreciate the relationship, and I think it's nice to see two cisgender boys appreciate each other in that way. Usually that's only reserved for girls. I guess Skins also does that really well where they show closeness between their male characters. With Minnie and Aloe, they both struggle with their parents' choices and what's expected of them, leaving them both to rebel against being anything like their parents. As much as I believe Minnie and Franky should have developed romantically, I think despite being from different worlds similar to Nick and Franky, Minnie and Aloe made way more sense. Minnie had been out with Nick, who didn't treat her well, and slept with her best friend, along with facing disappointment from her birth father, who abandoned her multiple times in her life when she needed him. Aloe was someone who wanted a girlfriend and treated Minnie well once they started hooking up.
You gonna keep giving me the silent treatment? I just waited to receive shit for you.
Great, thanks. I'd quite like for you not to be here right now.
I'm telling you, I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, it doesn't matter.
I thought it was working. We agreed.
Done, Mins.
But Aloe,
Say it. I don't think you know how to love anything.
By having someone be nice to Minnie, she was able to see that she was not only worthy of a gentle love and affection, but through deciding to have her baby, she realized she was able to share that love with another being. Aloe, not having a care in the world, was his best self when he was with Minnie, and once he saw that she was pregnant, he knew he'd have to step up and take responsibility for the new family he had created with Minnie. They both wanted the traditional ideals of their genders, with Minnie wanting to be loved and Aloe wanting to be respected. But it takes them failing at achieving those ideals and facing disappointment before they start to put the effort into becoming these gendered ideals through the most traditional way possible. Gender expression in teenage characters has developed with the changing times. Post Skins premiering, there have been advancements throughout the world, including the expanding of gay and transgender rights, as well as the rise of fourth wave feminism and the Black Lives Matter movement. These progressive ideals help steer newer representations of mainstream teen shows and how their characters were presented to audiences. Shows like ABC Family's 2010 hit Pretty Little Liars, E4's 2013 drama My Mad Fat Diary, and MTV's 2014's Faking It had queer main characters and explored sexuality and romance in conservative communities, primarily through a teenage girl's lens. Looking back a little bit, I want to give Degrassi The Next Generation its props for being the first mainstream teen show to feature a wide range of diverse gender expressions and sexualities with added nuance. Like they used to say, Degrassi goes there. Adam Torres was mainstream television's first major transgendered teen protagonist, which was an incredible moment at the time. As a kid who didn't know much about transgender people, nevertheless kids, it was an earnest introduction and helped me to start reframing my thoughts about gender. What made Adam's journey as a trans boy relatable was that it was a journey of identity that is inherent to the teenage experience.
So blessed to have received so much positive feedback with Adam. It was really just never even like a thought, like how could somebody, disagree with these stories that are so important to tell? But
Yeah.
you know, you're always going to have people that disagree or that want to, you know, there are builders and there are destroyers, and there's always going to be people that will try to destroy, especially when you're trying to, you know, show love and positivity and help others and tell stories that are important.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. And I think even in the opposite of that, any struggle that I had portraying Adam was nothing once I heard those positive stories, the stories that literally bring tears to my eyes because of how impactful Adam was. Okay, I'm not going to cry. But it's true, you know, like when you hear people opening up and being so vulnerable with you, and like I'm just an actress, like obviously, like I didn't even write this, right? But it's hugely impactful.
His character was killed off in a car accident from texting and driving. It was sad to see such an important breakthrough character end that way and fall into a stereotype.
The long-standing convention of narratives killing off queer characters far more frequently than straight characters is known as the bury your gays trope. Queer characters die so often in movies and TV that the website doesthedogdie.com's list "Does an LGBT person die?" has too many examples to count. The bury your gays trope is pervasive, both in its literal form and also in its subtler impact, because even when queer characters aren't subjected to overt violence or death, many of them still haven't been allowed to be happy.
Which shows how much work was still to be done and where improvements could be made. In 2010, the hit television series Glee not only had multiple gay teen characters normalized with Kurt, Santana, Brittany, and Blaine, but in 2012, the show also introduced Unique Adams, further making a milestone in transgender visibility. Unique starts as Wade, who moves from holding this internally suppressed fantasy to living openly in her identity. Honestly, Glee in general had a lot going on with gender expression, whether it was the outfits, dancing, or the characters' relationships. There was always a pull between masculine and feminine. We even got to see one of the teachers, Coach Beast, go transition from a woman to a transgender man. I'm just realizing the name Coach Beast, and I'm like, oh my god. Yeah. So they really were going against the grain to include more gender-inclusive stories, but it's still mainstream television. A lot of which is attested to the creator, Brian Murphy, being a gay man and having the power to tell narratives about the people in his community. I think that was what attracted such a wide array of people to it and allowed it to merge its campiness with mainstream progressivism. Outside of the US, UK, and Canada, we can see these changes in teen gender expressions start to shape teen culture globally. In 2015, Norway stepped into the mix with their iconic Skins-esque high school series, Scam, which has spun off 8 adaptations around the world in the last decade. In the original Norwegian one, we're able to see characters like Isaac and Sana who struggle to fit into the traditional stereotypes for boys and girls within their communities. Isaac is gay and has a difficult time with not only this, but understanding his feelings as a cisgender boy with heterosexual friends, and Sana is a Muslim girl within Norwegian society, so she finds challenges in juggling the traditional standards for girls in both worlds.
Hva var det du putta oppi burkaen din nå?
Burkaen min?
Ja, nikab da.
Nikab? Du kan ikke navnet på det plagget 10% av elevene bruker? Du rasist?
Many of the global adaptations featured similar storylines dealing with cisgender boys and their queerness, or Muslim girl characters and their split identities. By the mid to late 2010s, we not only get to examine gender representation and sexuality culturally through these characters, but we start to see a shift in societal norms and language that surrounds gender nuance in Gen Z characters. We see this throughout demographics, whether it shows like 2017's Archie comic drama, Riverdale, 2018's Spanish teen drama Elite on Netflix, or even 2018's North Irish dramedy Dairy Girls. I think there was something in the water in 2019 because it feels like the year that changed gender expression in teen media. We see not only the first transgender character in Scam, Germany, aka Druck, with the character of David Schreiber, along with a non-binary bisexual character, Issy. But we continue to see different gender identities in Scam France with Max Bernini, a trans boy, amongst a handful of other queer characters across adaptations. I feel like the two most obvious modern teen shows that play with gender expression are Sex Education, which premiered in January of 2019, and Euphoria, which premiered in June of 2019. The two shows really are some of the best examples of how teen characters rewrote the rules of gender and sexuality on television. In Netflix's Sex Education, the characters all dress like they are coming out of a Dr. Seuss book written for teens, and it's awesome. Eric Effiong's coming out arc celebrates Black queer identity with warmth and humor, showing how this character's flamboyance shapes his personal, masculine, and feminine expressions. The outfits for the characters are colorful and warm, but also androgynous, with boys wearing more feminine pieces and girls wearing more masculine pieces regularly. Gender expression began to disconnect from sexuality. However, with that being said, Sex Education also reinforced how important clothing and appearance is to those outside of the binaries, especially when it comes to those who identify as trans or non-binary.
As you can see, the characters' wardrobes tell you so much about who they are. And this is why it's so crazy and so good story-wise for them to get rid of the costumes and force these kids to wear the most drab, gray school uniforms when the new head teacher, Hope, starts working at the school. But on the con side, a really important point is that school uniforms tend to be heavily gendered, with girls dressing in skirts and boys dressing in pants. And this season, they actually introduced a non-binary character, Cal, who challenges the system by wearing a baggy boys uniform every day, despite Hope's transphobic nagging.
Boys in this costume and girls in this costume, but I'm non-binary.
The awkwardness of adolescence and youth. Just taking me back to the times where I was grappling with my own understanding of my gender and sexuality, and reminding me that patience is something that is necessary when discovering more about yourself, not even just within the context of gender or sexuality, but also just in terms of self-discovery and self-understanding.
On to HBO's Euphoria. Jules Vaughn and her transgender journey anchors her as a multidimensional teenage girl who is trying to understand her femininity. Jules' character is transformative in the realm of teenage television, as she's not only played by an actual trans person, but Hunter Schafer was able to take part in the writing on Jules' special episode, Fuck Anyone Who's Not a C-Blob.
I feel like my entire life I've been trying to conquer femininity, and somewhere along the way I feel like femininity conquered me. Most girls, when you first talk to them, they like automatically analyze and compare themselves to you, and then they search for where you fit in their hierarchy, and then they treat you accordingly.
What hierarchy?
Like how close you are to what they all collectively want to be, like in their heads.
Right.
And even if they've like mastered the art of hiding it with like smiles and nods and small talk, it's like you can still catch them doing it. Like their eyes wandering over your face, or the quick takes up and down your body, or like they watch how your clothes hang off your torso, or like they look for what tags are on your clothes to see where you shop, or they'll watch your hands to find like fucked up cuticles or chipped nail polish. Honestly, it would be a kind of sensual experience if it wasn't so fucking terrifying.
So they want to find flaws.
Yeah, most girls.
But not real.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is very intimate and focuses solely on Jules while she's in a therapy session. You can very much feel Hunter's experience bleeding into Jules's, creating this intensely specific look into the life of a transgender teen struggling with this balance between masculinity and femininity.
I definitely felt a little complicated at first about having Jules kind of really elaborate on where she's at with the gender and sexuality. I think I want to go off my hormones. One of my favorite things about last season was that it was unlabeled. But if I've learned anything from being trans, it's that, you know, that spiral kind of never stops. And so with this episode, I think she becomes a bit of a vehicle for me to express some of my personal stuff.
The thought of puberty, like this irreversible metamorphosis, was just like fucking terrifying.
Further looking at our other Euphoria characters, Rue Bennett defies dress codes, fluidly dressing more masculine than feminine, while Cal and Nate wrestle violent repression of their more feminine desires, overcompensating with a volatile masculinity, both reflecting the generational similarities in gender spectrum-based struggles. We also see more traditionally feminine traits in characters like Ethan, owning a sense of warmth and flamboyance as a straight cisgender boy, moving from his queer-coded locker room dance to his accurate drag portrayal of Mrs. Howard. Then on the opposing end, we have characters like Kat Hernandez, who takes on more traditionally masculine traits through her online fetish work, and her adopting the dominant role in her sexual and romantic relationships. Euphoria taking off around the rise in TikTok during the height of the pandemic era, it captured a fantastical zeitgeist, allowing teenagers stuck at home to romanticize their would-be high school experiences, living vicariously through these characters, their aesthetics, and their nuanced genders and sexualities. So with Euphoria and sex education existing at the peak of all these emerging teen cultural breakthroughs, the return to gender norms became a thing of the past across the mainstream as new media in and outside of teen television started to represent this change in the new generations of adolescents, affirming their gender expression as valid within the mainstream and recognizing the shift amongst the youth as they try to depict them accurately. By 2021, we saw this across teen characters, whether it be Matilda in Everything's Gonna Be Okay on Freeform, or in HBO's Generation or Netflix's Young Royals. Defying gender expectations for Gen Z was the standard, and traditional gendered depictions were seen as dated. Honestly, it feels like there was a bit of a battle between Netflix and HBO with who would capture the most accurate portrayal of Gen Z. Netflix then came out with 2022's Heartstopper about two queer main characters and their friends who stand across the gender and sexuality spectrum. Again, we're now getting more queer actors playing queer characters, so the representation isn't just through the role, but through the performance as well. This leads us to Netflix's 2022 Gen Z reboot of Heartbreak High, which has outlasted and outperformed HBO's failed Gen Z reboots of Gossip Girl in 2021 and Pretty Little Liars in 2022. Guess Netflix won. I think Heartbreak High is a great show to end this video on, as it is the most current teen show that expresses gender in such a nuanced and visible way. It's only had 2 seasons so far, but it has been confirmed to end with the 3rd and final season. Shows like Heartbreak High really push how boring the gender binary can be, and how releasing characters to sit at all ends of the spectrum can create creatively enduring and narratively entertaining storylines. We have characters like Darren Rivers, who stands as a non-binary teen lead, Quinny Hollingsworth, an autistic lesbian played by an autistic actor, Cash Piggott, who is asexual, and so much more. We even have multiple bisexual boy and cisgender girl love triangles, and even a threesome. In season 2, the boys and girls are divided with further nuance into gendered and mixed gender groups based on their ideas of sex and gender. We can see more how gender roles are defined by older generations and their passed down expectations, whether adopted by the youth in times of distress or discarded in favor of more inclusive understandings. We also get to see gender roles in relationships change and shift, with characters like Missy and Spider getting involved, and Spider having intimacy issues, causing Missy to be the dominant one in their sexual relationship. These are just a few of the intersections of Heartbreak High, but the show really does a great job at depicting the chaos and charm of being a teenager and trying to understand one's identity in the modern age. The expansion of teen portrayals in mainstream television is colored by the variations of gender and sexuality. What began as rigid binaries for gender expression has evolved into a kaleidoscope of lived identity. Going back almost a century, each era layered nuance and added to the spectrum of identities available to teens. Whether it be tomboys, alt-girls, indie soft boys, femmes, non-binaries, and other queer pioneers, teen television was always the vessel to break through the mainstream with these unique yet realistic stories. By the time Skins came along and stretched every axis, subsequent teen dramas deepened the palette even further and added to the representations available to teens across the gender spectrum. Today's teen dramas don't ask characters to check narrow boxes anymore if they don't want to. They celebrate gender as a self-created aesthetic of infinite expression, accessing the masculine and feminine parts of oneself in whatever way feels best to each individual.